you, Senator King. Senator Scott, please.
Great, thanks. I want to thank each of you for being here. I come from Florida. We've got 21 bases and 3 unified commands. Military is a pretty big deal, especially in our panhandle, but all across our state. So you look at the Chinese spy balloon, you look at them building military to defeat us. You'd think that American citizens would start waking up and saying we ought to stop buying things from Communist China, because it seems like they're taking the money they make to go eventually defeat us is what their goal. So I guess the first thing is, do you think Americans ought to stop buying things made in Communist China because it ultimately flows to the Chinese Communist Party and it can hurt us? I mean, what do y'all think?
Sure. So I think we definitely are, the U.S. government is already imposing significant restrictions on export of technology that could be used, as far as we know, to fuel military-civil fusion in China, as well as the PLA. With respect to technology below that, I think there is still a lot of advantage that Americans actually get from the cheaper products from China.
But doesn't China get a benefit?
For some of the more cheaper products, not as much, but definitely on the higher end, China is benefiting more. So we need to disaggregate where we want to limit our exports to China and where exports to China or buying from China can actually benefit U.S. consumers and U.S. citizens.
Senator, I might add to that. I agree with the way Dr. Lin framed it. It's the strategic decoupling that's key. We have failed, and as you know, and you've led on this in the Senate, to make sure that we are not giving China the types of capabilities through our commerce that enhance the tip of the spear for part of their military. But we also have an interest in making China dependent on older technologies. And the scale of our exports to China in some ways could benefit us, but certainly on the military side, those elements, and I think we're seeing some good things out of the Bureau of Industry and Security and Commerce that are starting to put up walls, but it's taken way too long.
Do you think that China thinks we're getting weaker or stronger in relative to them? How do you think their leadership thinks?
What I've read and the way that they're planning is that they think they can beat us, particularly in the Taiwan scenario.
Right. What about, you read all this and what you hear is that how much time we're putting on having a woke military. It seems to me, I've always thought we ought to have, I served in the Navy, I thought our job was to be a lethal military, that people are scared to death of us. So do you think that, what do you think the government of Communist China thinks when they read that we're focused on pronouns and things like that, rather than how we have the most lethal military force?
Senator, I think the defense strategy is clear on this, and it started with Secretary Mattis. We need to be focused on being the most lethal force, as you point out, focusing on the core mission. Anybody in the U.S. military wants to focus on their mission. We've done polling at the Reagan Institute with our Reagan National Defense Survey. Politicization is a problem. The American people have reduced trust and confidence in the military because they believe the military is politicized. And the more we can do to allow our military, our men and women in uniform, to focus on warfighting, the better it will be for our military and the more it will deter China.
I'd like to make a comment that, look, I'm afraid that the more that we have partisan and political fights, the more our adversaries think that we're weak. I've made that point many times in public before. They watch all of this, and frankly, they think we've lost it. So the more I'm afraid that we make statements like this, the more that we start attacking our fellow Americans for whatever perspective we think they come from, the more that Russia and China think that we're working ourselves out of history. They watch all of this very carefully, but not in the ways that you think. I think China and Russia do know we still can be lethal, but we're most lethal when we get our act together and that we're all Americans fighting together on one side. And that's what our adversaries and our friends are looking to us. They would like us to get over all of these fights that we're having internally. And so, I would just urge us to, I don't honestly know what that label means. I try not to use labels. I think the more that we can stand up and just show that we're Americans in solidarity, the more we will be able to have a deterrent effect on our adversaries, and the more we'll bring our friends behind us, because they're watching us and thinking, has America lost the plot at this moment?
So we stopped the vaccine mandate just recently in December. One of the issues I think a lot of us have been focused on is how do we reinstate people that were discharged, and how do we make sure they're not put in an adverse monetary position. We have a problem with retention. We have a problem with recruitment. So how much do you think it would be important that we let people come back in that for religious or health reasons decide not to take the vaccine, or and also make sure that they don't have to pay back, back pay, they don't have to pay for training, things like that.
Readiness is key here. We, as you know, we're not meeting our numbers, and so I believe this Congress has given authority to the Secretary of Defense and Department of Defense to do just that, and it's about execution now at the State Center, Scott.
And if I could add, one major advantage that our military has over the PLA is the quality of our personnel. If you look at what President Xi Jinping has mentioned in terms of priorities for the PLA, after military theory and organization, the second priority is development of the PLA personnel, and equipment comes after that.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.